We've got a show for you. Coach has been planning this one for a little bit.
Yeah.
We were meeting earlier today, and he was bragging about our guest tonight, Paul Chapman and company. And so we're excited about this. But before we jump into tonight, Bishop, do you mind just opening us up with a word of prayer?
Absolutely. God, we thank you tonight for allowing us to be here. Thank you that in the midst of all of the things that's going on around us, that we could still come to you for everything. And so we ask you, God, to bless our time tonight. Thank you for the guests that have joined us on tonight. And we pray that what is shared would be impactful to our communities, that we can save our Black boys. It's in your great name, Jesus, we pray. Thank God and amen.
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 All right. And as always, we like to kick things off with the why we do what we do, why we talk about what we're talking about. It's the hungry. 44 million people in the U.S. who face hunger. Arkansas continues to be ranked the hungriest state in America. It's about the widow. The United States has the world's highest rate of children living in single-parent households. It's about the orphan. Over 391,000 children in the U.S. living in the foster care system, nearly 4,000 of them right here in Arkansas. And for children aging out of that system, 80% are going to have a child or be in prison within 2 years. 65% of them will experience homelessness. This is a real problem for these young people. It's about poverty. More than 38 million Americans live in poverty right here in Arkansas today. There are over 17,000 kids who are identified as homeless in our school systems. It's about addiction. Half of people over 12 have used illicit drugs, and over 40,000 people die in the U.S. each year from overdosing. It's about the prisoner. The U.S. leads the world in the total number of incarcerations with more than 2 million people. And at every Arkansan, our vision is to see more people chasing their God-given dreams. And far too often, those dreams are sidelined because of the zip code you were born in more than anything else. And we're blessed to be able to host First and 45 with Coach Fitzhill, because all of these facts I just mentioned are contributing factors to one thing that we have got to change. And that is the number one cause of death for a Black male, 0 to 44, is homicide. It's not car accidents. It's not cancer. It's not heart disease. It is just out and out violence. And that's something that we're going to talk about tonight, especially. And Coach, do you want to just introduce our guest for tonight? Our first guest for tonight. Yeah. This is going to be a packed show, people. So hopefully you're looking on social media, follow us there so you can see all these beautiful faces tonight.
Yeah. Thank you, Bishop. Pastor Drew and the Bishop. Thanks for those prayers. And we do have a special guest here. Probably nearly 2 years ago, I was introduced to Prosecutor Will Jones through mobs of Yolanda Harris and Elizabeth Jones after they had been over on campus. And I don't know if Mother Olivier is tuned in with us tonight, but from New Iberia, I was bringing mothers together who had lost their sons. And when we look at this disparity of the population of Black mothers who oftentimes are burying their sons, and I'm trying to give them a place, what I call a safe space, to be able to express the trauma that they're going through. It was really why I came up with the term homicide grenade, because at the time, the shrapnel of the grenade, not only in many times that somebody's been buried, somebody's going to prison, but the trauma that's left behind, the residue is just so painful. And recently, I asked Mother Yolanda, as I called her, that if she would consider, and we made the introduction, started working with teenage pregnant young ladies, because what the data shows us is that many times it's the sons of these teenage births that are leading to these destructive decisions that have to come face Prosecutor Will Jones' office. But my heart grieves so is because in many times the kids didn't even have a chance. They were just born into this crisis of situation. These social determinants were facing them. And so, I had the opportunity to meet with Will, and Will expressed his interest in working, not only which he'll speak about suppression of the violence that we have in our city right now, but I was really enabled by what he felt about what I call prevention, intervention, and diversion with his juvenile prosecutor, Ms. Casey Moat. And so from that standpoint, I had a chance to visit with him and then started speaking about some alternative things that we could do for those people who really didn't need to be behind bars, right, and that could be a contributing force in our community to help us in the city to keep crime down as best we could. And so with that, I want to say welcome. Will, thank you for taking time to come and visit First and 45 with Pastor Drew, Bishop Fred, and Coach Fitz, where we talk about this homicide epidemic. And I know you have been working to address this crisis as well as others, but this is the one I speak to because it's has hit epidemic proportion in our community. So we appreciate your sensitivity to it, your intentionality to it, but also, understanding we need to create a safer Little Rock.
Well, thank you. Yes. Thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate so much what you guys do, the message that you have in the community. And I was listening to Pastor Drew's intro, and what we try to do in our office mirrors, the work that you guys are doing. We know that our community needs to be safer, and the 2 years before I took office were the deadliest years in Pulaski County. I had over 120 homicides in 2022. So I knew coming into this office that something had to be different. We just couldn't take the same approach that we always do in law enforcement and prosecution and just respond after something happens. And so I knew we had to take a different approach, and we worked really hard to do that. It's not easy, but you mentioned Miss Yolanda and Miss Liz a while ago. They were some of the first ones that came to me, and they trusted us in our office to talk about the cases that they had. And I just appreciate them having the trust, and you as well, to believe in what we're doing. And we're not perfect. We know that. And I talk to families all the time, and I say, true justice comes in another life, if you believe. And I know you all believe the same way I do. I don't have the ability to bring true justice, but in dealing with the laws of man that are not perfect, we're going to do everything we can to get them justice. And that's what we tell them. I tell the families that we're going to do our best to get you justice on this earth, and they're going to get our best effort. We don't promise convictions. We don't promise outcomes. We promise that they'll get our best effort, and that we will do everything we can to embrace them and try to help them through this unbelievable period. Because the world is not. We're not supposed to bury our children. No, and that's what we deal with. Well,
and I want to echo something, because I've the sites. I've seen them. We've had them across from Everett, Kansas, in our office, and we had our staff going over. We've lost children from our youth in our program. We lost 2 Dream Center kids, those things. And so, but you've made a special point to be on those sites and be on those locations. Speak to that, and why do you think that's an important part of being there, not only for the police officers, but for the families? And because there's 2 sides to that's going on, that's oftentimes, particularly in the community, that oftentimes people know each other. Right. So you got both people hurting on both sides, and it's just for different reasons.
Well, and there's a lot of reasons for that. One is that I want the families to know and the community to know that I am absolutely committed to finding justice. And oftentimes that means getting up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when an alert goes out that there's a homicide, mostly in the streets of Little Rock. And I feel like it's my responsibility to go to those scenes and make sure that and help the investigations, proceed in the proper way. So what I tell people a lot of times is the job of a prosecutor, 30 to 40% of that job, our job takes place before a defense attorney even knows they have a case, right? I'm there from the beginning. We're working with police. We're working with them to make sure they get search warrants when they need it. And even judges won't sign an arrest warrant in Pulaski County without the prosecutor's office reviewing that and signing that warrant, so the judges know we've reviewed it. So we are protecting the rights of those people that commit these crimes from the very beginning. We do that even before they make a call to their defense attorney. And then most of the time, and I've talked to people, you hear defense attorneys are protecting the rights of the defendant. Well, they do that by filing motions and things like that to say that something wasn't done properly in the investigation. Well, those are only those motions are only granted about 1% of the time. So that means that before the defense attorney ever even gets called, we're helping, and the police are doing a good job of making sure that we're protecting the constitutional rights of those that are accused. But the other side of that is I want the families to know that we're there with them. And I believe strongly enough that I want to be there. And usually I try to, every chance I get, I try to be in those first meetings with the the families. And I want them to know, not that I'm necessarily more important than anyone else. I want them to know that our entire office is with them, and that I'm there to look them in the eye and tell them that I am so sorry for what's happened to them, and that we're going to give them everything that we possibly have.
And Will, I know that has to be very hard to sit there and, and I hadn't dealt with it on that level of intensity that you have, but the grieving of the families and to see, particularly in the city that's seeing violence as such that we have. I mean, you said over 100, 2 years ago. I mean, that's a lot of cases that you're having to follow up. And then what we find out in most cases, the research suggests that there's nearly 2.5 people being charged for every homicide in association.
And I think to speak a testament to what you're talking about, showing up and doing that, the shooting that was this weekend down on Cross Street, there was one victim that died, but there were 3 victims that showed up at the hospital. This is not just
the grenade.
This just happened in this one little place. I mean, for you as a prosecutor, that becomes a very complex situation with lots of moving parts, lots of different locations, all of that. So, I mean, that I just can't even imagine trying to manage all those details, like what's on your heart and what God's kind of laid before you. So that's kudos to that.
Well, thank you. But it also helps us do our job better. I mean, our chief deputy, Kelly Ward, does the most of the heavy lifting on those things, and she's communicating with the investigators the whole time. But it helps us because we have to make the filing decision, right? Even though we're signing off on that affidavit and we think there's probable cause to make the arrest, when it comes over, we're the ones that have to file it in circuit court. And so we have to look at that and determine what charges are the best to charge. And if we've been there, we've been communicating with them from the beginning, it shortens that process. We can file it quicker, and we can get help start on the path to justice quicker. But it helps us to just get our brain around what's going on. And then when that case is assigned to another deputy prosecutor, when they come to visit with me or Kelly Ward, she can say, hey, make sure you check this, check that, and this is how that, and explain it to them. So we're really, it accelerates our process. And when we meet with the families, they know we've already done a lot of work on this case on the front end. And that helps. It just helps them to have faith in us, because a lot of times we have to have decisions. We have ethical duties, and sometimes we can't go forward on cases or different things happen. And they have to be able to trust us to get through that process. And I feel strongly about that. And the thing I love is now when I'm going to some of these meetings with these younger prosecutors, they're using the same words that I used to use all the time,
right?
And they're taking control of that. Sometimes I don't even have to really speak all that much, and it's just it's very powerful.
And I was just wondering, like, when you have to sit here, and sometimes when a family's wanting justice, but you're limited by the law. I mean, for what you can do, because you have to follow the law is the law. So you just can't circumvent the law to do what they're feeling. So I mean that's a very slippery. I mean, because the family is wanting justice, and I mean that has to, sometimes as you're navigating that, because I've talked to families before, and we're going to talk about that in the second half. But to be sensitive, because I've watched this take out in court before, and it is a very sensitive situation in many cases on both sides. Correct?
It is, and that's why we just have to build that relationship. That we have to make sure that the families trust us and know that we're on their side. But we have to do it right. And it's not what I find is all the time. Just the unbelievable amount of grace that families show, and these ourselves are we're people too. And one of our I remember a time when our chief deputy had to go out to a scene, and it was early in the morning on Mother's Day. And here she is looking at I'm gonna tear up now talking about it, but here she is looking at this child here, this son of God is laying there dead in the streets of Blue Rock, and she knows that the mother is going to get that call and something's happened to her son on Mother's Day. And she's a mother. Just think about that. It's just those things that they really resonate, and they're really hard sometimes. But I believe we have to put ourselves out there to let these families know that we're here.
Yeah.
and we'll fight for justice for them.
Hey, we're going to take a break. It's getting ready for the second quarter. It's Will Jones, prosecutor turned Pulaski County, my man, Pastor Drew and Bishop Fred. Stay tuned with us. I got a good question that I'm going to share an experience that I've had people ask me that I want the prosecutor to answer for. Hey, it's First and 45 with Coach Fitz. Hey, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Black men have so many different problems, so many different issues. Homicide rate, high incarceration rate, fatherless homes. What is America going to do about it?
What are we going to do about it? Yeah, what are we going to do about it? When I say we, I'm talking to black men. I'm asking us, what are we going to do about issues that negatively impact black men and boys to a greater degree than other demographics? Everybody knows about the homicide epidemic in this country regarding black men and boys. While comprising only 6% of the nation's population, will account for 50% of the nation's homicide victims. So what are we going to do about it? Here's another disturbing reality. While making up only 6% of the nation's population, we're about 40% of the nation's prison population. In fact, 1 in 3 black males are projected to go to jail in their lifetime. Again, I ask, what are we going to do about it? Collectively, black men have the means to solve these problems. We just don't have the mind to do so. And means without the mind.
And we are back with First and 45 with Coach Fitzgerald. We've had a good discussion with Pulaski County Prosecutor Will Jones. We got more of that. Coach, turn it over to you again.
Hey, yeah, this is something that really resonated with me before we started the DORI, the Derek Olivier Research Institute, which how First and 45 was birthed out of as we started collecting data. And I'm really excited, guys, about the next First and 45 edition. It's going to be my best work ever.
Coach, you were talking about and you've said so often about that call, that you had to make to Mother Olivier. And I heard prosecuting Attorney Jones say having to talk to a mother on Mother's Day about her child.
Yeah, my deal with Mother Olivier is why I go down twice a year and stay in Derek's room, and hadn't changed it. Yeah. It makes me tear up because I have a son. Yeah. And I can't imagine. And that's why I have this connection with Mother Yolanda and Mother Liz, because, that could be my son. And just like we had the young man at Conway, our student from Arkansas Baptist College, wounded. Almost, missed his spine by a few centimeters, where the shooting was like, well, that's a family from Los Angeles, California that we recruited from Arkansas Baptist College to come play basketball. Now, my deal, made it out of Los Angeles, and you come to Conway and get shot. Now, and so now I thought about, we had to call his mother. He's still there. He's still in the hospital. Mm-hmm. Okay, he's been in the hospital now almost 3 weeks, and you think about that bill. He was in a coma, an induced coma for a week. Mm-hmm. So. The expense, how it's expensive.
You got that. You got his family has been
in the hotel
for 3 weeks.
Yeah,
in hotel,
exactly right.
Fare,
all of that,
and he's not going to be able to fly back home.
Right, they got to drive him.
Be a drive back home because he's not.
The doctor on the transport. That's exactly right. And so all these things that you speak to are,
and that's 1 out of 6 kids that was injured in that.
Correct. Yeah. No, it was actually 2 murdered. 1 murdered with 9 injured.
9 injured. Okay.
Yeah. And when I speak, you talk about calling Mother Liv. You had to call her. That was true. But what the thing that really got to me was about a year and a half later, a student came up to me because we didn't know who murdered Derek, but we saw it on tape. That's why those cameras are so important. Mm-hmm. All right, so we had the cameras outside of our dealer, so we pull it. So I see this. I see it. I'm just blown away. I said, why would this young man do this? So he walked right down Bishop Street, pulled out a 9mm. A group of my students were standing there, and I'm going to share this story because he just pulled out the 9mm and just started shooting at the students. Well, they had a conflict, the night before. And so that was his payback. But Derek wasn't involved. He just happened to be there changing the tire. Mm-hmm. And so finally, a year and a half later, which is going to lead me to the question, my dean brought this young man up to my office. And so I'm sitting there. He said, hey, coach, this young man want to talk to you. He got something to tell you. I said, really? I said, okay. So he comes in and he said, hey, you've been talking about why we don't, because the guy didn't get in the car. He ran up to the back of the 16th Street, just ran up the street. So he knew he was going. He didn't have anybody to pick him up. So he said, hey, I know who murdered Derek. And I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, I was on the 3rd floor. I was in the 3rd floor of the bathroom when it happened. This is what he said. He said, Derek must have been from the country. I said, why you ask that? He said, because everybody else knew it was bullets except Derek. He said, Derek turned around and didn't move. He didn't know the pop, 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 pop. He said, everybody else must have been from the death. I said, well, he's from New Iberia. And he said, so it hit him 3 times. And he stumbled back and died right there. And I had to call his mother. But I said, well, why are you telling me now? He said, if he said he was going to get out on bail. I said, why? I said, he said, no. He said, I said, well, how could you configure that? Why did you come today to tell me? He said, well, the young man that murdered Derek murdered the convenience store clerk in Little Rock. Mm. She was white. He looked at me and said, she won't get out. He won't get out for her. So I'm telling you it was. I said, what? And I said, are you serious? He said, Coach, I know him. He said, but I was scared to come tell because he would have got out on bond. And so that's, to me, I'm asked that question. That's why I keep asking this question when we get information, and I've heard it's a law or whatever, and how I believe in our communities that we do not speak up many times because we are scared that the persons are going to get out. And then, they have nothing to lose at that point. I mean, I'm already facing life if somebody tells me. So when we have this information and you have to be signed off because I know you're a man, you won't charge somebody for murder unless you know that I know you.
Right. Yeah.
You got to have evidence that I'm confident that we can prosecute this person in case.
Absolutely.
When we know that and we know that's the law, well, why would a judge give somebody a bond? Because I'm convinced through my studies since 2012, that our communities are more dangerous because of those facts that if you have enough evidence to arrest somebody, I don't know why would they get out. Now, I mean, because, I'm always telling my son who you with, where you go, what you're going to do. You can be part of the problem just by guilty by association. But those are different type of charges on who pulled the trigger and who doesn't. If you know a person has pulled the trigger, what laws dictate how that person, we know that we have murderers walking around on bond that you've charged for murder?
Great question.
Well, that's a great question, and I brought a rule book to help answer that question. So, Rule 9.2 talks about release on money bond, and you'll hear a lot of times. Sometimes people say, "Well, the only reason for a bond is to ensure that someone comes back to court." And you'll hear some, have bond hearings, and they'll say, "Oh, he's going to stay with mom. He's going to do whatever, and we'll make sure that he gets back to court and all that." But the rule actually changed in 2024, and there's a section now that I think would resonate with you, and it talks about a risk that the defendant will commit a serious crime, intimidate witnesses, harass or take retaliatory action against any witness, or otherwise interfere with the administration of justice, or pose a danger to the safety of any other person. So we know a lot of times, and we talked about, being at these scenes early, and then we monitor things. I won't talk about how we gather all of our evidence. Don't put all that out there, but we kind of know what the communication is with a lot of these folks, and we try to gather that, and we try to really impress upon the judges that there's more that goes into this just than whether they're going to actually just appear in court. I agree with you. I don't know that you have a whole lot of motivation to come back to court if you're facing a life sentence.
No question.
I don't.
Or behave while you're out.
Or behave while you're out. You're right. And so, we argue that too, but judges disagree with us sometimes, and I'm not going to criticize judges.
Right.
I mean,
No, I
certainly,
understand.
I believe, like you're saying, I know I can remember when I was down in Pine Bluff, I was the chief deputy down there for 2 years when I was running for office. And I know we had a period of time where our prosecutor was on a vacation. We had 6 homicides in 6 days. It was just insane. But what happened there is we identified the ones that committed those crimes, and they were locked up without bond. We didn't have another homicide for 2 months. So what does that tell you?
That's exactly right.
It's your point.
It is.
What was it? A year or so back, we had the one gentleman that
he's in
known 5 homicides.
you prosecuted him too.
Right.
That he just kept being able to evade the system.
He was a teenager. And I mean,
teenager.
And I'm saying, but that's the deal you have to understand. That's, to me, that's suppression. I mean, you're in war. All right. And so you have to suppress to stop, or people keep shooting at you. At some point, you have to do that. And I'm saying right now, and that's, I know that things are discretionary, who charged, but when it comes down, the judges has that. But I think if you go back and look, to your point, that those facts speak to that. And we know once those people get out, because most times it's retaliatory.
Right.
Okay. And so that's what happened to Conway. The young man was telling me is that somebody hit somebody went over here and got a gun, and then it just escalated to that situation. But I just think, somebody said, for the laws to be, let me ask you, do you think the laws should be changed that legislative laws that, particularly in dangerous areas, that when that happens, that, because if you're charged until you're proven innocent, you're supposed to be innocent to proven guilty. Is that's the rule?
Well, that's right. That's what we talk about when you're going through the criminal process. But that's mostly when we're in trial, mostly in front of a jury. The jury's instructed not to consider the fact that they're sitting there in that chair as the defendant, that automatically means they're guilty. And so we have to prove our case, and we embrace that. We know we have to prove case beyond a reasonable doubt, and we consider that really from the beginning. And it kind of still keeps going back to that. It helps us if we're there, from the scene. Look, if I'm arguing a case and I can go back in my mind and I can see the young man on the sidewalk when I walked up there, I'm going to be able to do a better job to convey to a jury, what exactly happened. So, but the rules of criminal procedure are made by the Supreme Court. They're not passed in the state house out at the legislature. But this one I think has helped. It's new,
right.
And we argued every day, but judges don't always agree with us. And I'm like you. And really, you can make a good argument that we're saving that person from themselves too, right? Because we know sometimes there may be retaliation on them,
no question.
All those kind of things. So I just think if we get people there and calm down, and the other thing, it helps us to maybe get through the system a little faster,
right. Because
sometimes people aren't really, if they're out free walking around and they know they're facing life sentence, well, they're not really in any hurry to get the case resolved. But it's just it's really hard for the families. I can't imagine what it'd be like to know that someone killed your son,
and they're on the street,
and you run into them at the grocery store, or you have other sons, other children, and that you see them, and I can't imagine.
I can't either.
That would be an extra level of pain, and we talk with families all the time, and that they're heartbroken because the person that killed their child is out seemingly living a normal life with no consequences.
Correct.
We believe we're going to be able to get those consequences. 10,000 cases right now.
Wow.
And we have over 250 homicides in our office pending. So our attorneys are really working hard to work through those, but I could see where it'd just be a heartbreaking situation for a family to go through that and see.
Right. I want to flip before we go to a break. I want to give you a chance. The numbers, homicides have decreased. What is something that you're most proud of that you've been able to accomplish since you've been in office, when it comes down to it?
Well, I think we pulled the numbers yesterday, actually, and looked to see how many jury trials we conducted since we took office. In 2023, we had 84 jury trials. And then in 2024, we had 9 jury trials. And this year, we've had over 46. So what I think is we're showing that we'll go trial. We'll face a jury. We'll face maybe a possible life sentence. Once we've done some of that and shown that we can get some of these convictions, then I think that helps others to look at that and be like, okay, so then it's a lot less.
No question.
You may talk to those other folks and be like, hey, want to think about
That's what the life's supposed to be for, the deterrence, right?
Right. Yeah. So I think that's the thing we're most proud of. We have a young office that they are hungry and they are very experienced and they're gaining experience. And we love fighting these families and just doing justice. And they just, it's for me to set that transition has been overwhelming. I have to believe that that's a big part of who's going down.
Hey, we're going to have time. Drew, boy, that went by fast.
It goes fast. It goes fast, Coach. We're having fun.
Yeah, going fast. So, hey, first and 45 of Coach Hill. We got special guest Will Jones from Pulaski County Prosecutor's Office. We got Bishop Fred with me, and my man Pastor. We're going to be coming back with some special guests from Mothers of Black Sons Standing Against Death, with other participating organizations that they work with. And I was just with Miss Liz the other day getting ready for parole hearing, and I went to that, and it was interesting. I couldn't stay all the whole time, but I was there, and just to see even the grief that she experiencing now, going through, it touched my heart. So stay tuned for the second half. We'll bring those mothers in to join us. We'll be right back.
As a former football coach, knowing the engagement that takes place on the football field, the basketball courts, the track, baseball, outside of extracurricular activity, META is the best academic curriculum I've seen for the oftentimes socially challenged student. And glad to have a pilot program going here now with Hamilton Learning Academy, as well as juvenile detention facility, to inspire, grow hope to a population of kids who sometimes don't believe that in the United States that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is for them. And so this opportunity allows them to see that, to feel that, and to engage in that, and to leave here thinking that I can do something that maybe they didn't think they could do prior to enrolling in the META 24 program.
All right, who's the CFO? Yeah. Come on up. Give the CFO a round of applause. All right, for the marketing promotion team.
My name is Shania, and I make this pillow. It's a baby pillow for babies. It can be for a boy or for a girl. It's saying, be what you want to be. I really want to make a side hustle of this and give pillows to the hospital so you don't get good rest with soft pillows like this.
In the future, I want to 3D print some stuff that will help us in the world. I would love to print 3D houses to help architects build real houses, because there's a lot of people in the world that homeless right now, and I feel like if I'm able to print 3D houses, I feel like architects can make more houses faster.
Are they on?
And welcome back to First and 45 with Coach Fitzhill. We are, and I feel like we've been empowered today in being able to just connect in the heart of brokenness, dealing with families on both sides. So, real good, helpful information from the prosecutor today.
Well, I mean, that's the deal. As I said, Yolanda, his Miss Yolanda, and
they're with us.
Okay,
they
Yolanda
with us.
and Miss.
Ready to bring them in?
Yeah, bring them in. what is that? The price? Come on down, my people. How you doing, Liz?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good. And then Yolanda, hey, my mom. That's my dream team. That's what I call y'all my sheroes. Y'all my sheroes, because I tell you what, y'all inspire me in so many ways, because I I feel what you feel many times. And Miss Yolanda, we've been sharing some things through teenage pregnancy. And then Liz, I was with you 2 or 3 weeks ago. We were all together 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we were talking about what the prosecutor Will was talking about. And I just wanted you to share the emotions that you went through going for a parole hearing that was unsuccessful. And I have read your letter and just working with these valiant ladies, to keep pushing forward for justice, because it's really hard for them to think that they've lost their sons and somebody to come out and just live their life normally, just what we're talking about. And I know the pain. Kind of speak through the process, for that what you went through a couple of weeks ago, which was the first parole hearing for you, and you had to, I was coming to support. I had to leave for another meeting, but you can kind of speak to that a little bit.
Oh yes, of course. It's only been 4 years. First off, let me say that we're going into the 5th year, but I was actually quite stunned to receive correspondence in the mail stating that he is eligible for parole. It was initially scheduled for parole in October, and they moved it up to April. But just to receive that letter in the mail, we're all baffled to know that it's just this short time. It's been 4 years, and he's eligible for parole. So it was a lot of mixed emotions. It was just like removing the bandage off of the wound that's already not healed. So we had to relive everything, relive that night, the whole ordeal. It took me back to receiving the phone call that night to say that my son had been murdered. Never in a million years would I have thought that murder and my son would be in the same sentence. So it was just a whole ball of emotions. So very difficult.
Well, I saw you there and I watched your strength. I was praying for you the whole time. My heart, went out to you and your family because I know Peanut meant the world to you, as my son does to me. And that's why, whenever you call, I answer. Because that's and actually I'm sitting here with Will because of you and Yolanda. I mean, you guys introduced me to Will, based on, hey, Coach, will you come with us to meet with the prosecutor? And from that, Will has been supportive of things, but also wants to make sure that people who are involved in these type of activities, there's consequences, for the behavior. And Yolanda, I want to bring you on and let you speak a little bit to the fact of you were there to support
Yes.
Liz, and you have, you've been a big supporter of many mothers who have experienced what you have. I mean, I would probably call you the general supporter. I mean, you have been there, and God has given you strength
Yes.
to be able to be an anchor, for mothers. And the reason that, for you all realize in America, in our communities, this happens on average 30 times a day. I mean, so there's 30 calls a day taking place in the United States of America, which is why this is an epidemic, which is why we do this show, to bring awareness to this crisis that takes place. And you only hear about it in 4 different instances. Number one is usually a young man shot by the police, a young man in our community shot outside his race, a young man shot a prominent athlete or a rapper. All right, so that fifth person is never heard about oftentimes, and that's why this show has been created, for that specific person to bring a name to light, from that situation. So, Miss Yolanda, I mean, God has given you an anchor to be able to build support, and I just want you to speak to that a little bit right now, because you were there with Liz going through that, and walking and talking other parents through that when they experience what they go through.
Wow, I definitely have to give God the credit for this because it definitely not me. I was extremely I tell you, mentally, I lost it. So from the time since November 30th, so everything that I do is strictly by God's grace, and I definitely got to give Him all honor for just holding me up and allow me to be there for others because I definitely had to be there for Liz to show her support because I didn't get that opportunity to because the young man that took my son's life took a plea, so I didn't get a trial, I didn't get any of this, so he was out, I guess, what, about 11 months. He did less than a year. So my thing is, I didn't get justice, but I want her and others to get justice. Just because the system didn't, it failed me. I don't, that doesn't mean I have to be bitter towards not helping others. I want others to get justice, something I couldn't get. So I can get, I want to make sure they're happy. I'm happy if they're happy. So I know it hurts me a lot to think about the young man, being able to live his life and doing what he want to do. And he never really showed any, you know, mercy or he was sorry for what he did. He even to this day, I haven't heard from him since, but he's never really been sorry for what he did. And I know I have to live with that and I have to move forward. So I use all that negative energy and turn it into something positive by being there for moms like Liz and others who are currently going through it and just being there for them and hoping the system works for them and hoping they can get the peace that I didn't get.
Well, yeah, I've seen what you guys have been able to do, and I think at one church meeting we had about 27 mothers who had come together and shared. It was really a therapeutic session for the mothers to come together and strengthen. What we've talked about the last time that we were together would be to look at ways that we can give back through through the pain that can be transformational, that leads to prevention, diversion to other people and to other youth. And right now, what we realize through the social determinants of that leading to this homicide is that we find teenage pregnancy and high school dropouts oftentimes what leads to this crisis that we're dealing with, but then looking at the social factors, whereas when we grew up, grandmas were 60. Now what we see in many times, grandmas now are 30 and great grandmas are 40, 45. And so these are things from a moral standpoint that we have to address if we truly want to stop violence, in our communities. And I know, Yolanda, you're involved in other organizations before we go to a break. And because, because anytime a child is murdered, regardless of what ethnicity that is, just speak about all the groups that you all work with in Central Arkansas, because I've gone to some events with you all before. And it's not just this group, but anytime a child is murdered, there's pain and trauma that lives forever.
Yes. Parents of murdered children, I'm with them, and also Moms Men Action. I work with them also, and they are extraordinary. They're awesome group. I mean, the things that they do, they go above and beyond. And most of the people in the Mom Demand Action has never even lost a child. With the work that they do, they're so passionate about what they do, and that really touches me, knowing that they do so much for us, for those who have lost a loved one through gun violence, and to put their heart into Anna Moschetti. She's an angel, and I love her so much because she does so much, and she's so passionate. So I will continue to work with her, and I will continue to work with parents of murdered children also.
Right. No, that's and I've seen that. I know I went to one event. We're getting ready to take a break here, but those are people who that I, you've met them, you've talked to them, you feel it. And I know Mother Olivier has chimed in, and of course you were not in church when she's grieving many times because she said has never been solved in 14 years. So that goes on to pending cases like what you said, young man that was murdered on my campus when I was there.
Yes, sir.
And so those things, continue to, and closure, is something that you hope to bring to families and with not that's left there. But we're getting ready to go to take a break, and then we'll be back for the fourth quarter. This has been Yolanda. Can y'all stay with us for the fourth quarter?
Okay.
Y'all good? Yeah. We're gonna stay right here, and hey, we'll be right back. We had Yolanda Harrison and Elizabeth Jones, Prosecutor Will Jones, my man Pastor Drew Bishop Fred. Got the fourth quarter. Everybody put the fourth quarter. Put their hands up for fourth quarter. All right, we're gonna finish strong. We'll be right back.
Black men have so many different problems, so many different issues. Homicide rate, high incarceration rate, fatherless homes. What is America going to do about it?
What are we going to do about it? Yeah, what are we going to do about it? When I say we, I'm talking to black men. I'm asking us, what are we going to do about issues that negatively impact black men and boys to a greater degree than other demographics? Everybody knows about the homicide epidemic in this country regarding black men and boys. While comprising only 6% of the nation's population, will account for 50% of the nation's homicide victims. So what are we going to do about it? Here's another disturbing reality. While making up only 6% of the nation's population, we're about 40% of the nation's prison population. In fact, 1 in 3 black males are projected to go to jail in their lifetime. Again, I ask, what are we going to do about it? Collectively, black men have the means to solve these problems. We just don't have the mind to do so. And means without the mind.
And we're back with First and 45 with Coach Fitzgerald. Man, 3 great, phenomenal guests tonight. We've got Prosecutor Attorney Will Jones. We've got Ms. Yolanda Harrison and also Mr. Elizabeth Jones. And Coach, man, it's a lot to sponge up, but a conversation, and you just look at all of the chime-ins, different ones, and then Mother Olivia sharing. This is real. It's not just here locally, but this is happening all over the country.
And here's the unfortunately, this is where I work. 30 mothers got that call today. We can't emphasize that enough in America. Like I tell you guys, I've been to Desert Storm, I've been to war. And when I sit here and I say right here, it is America's unrecognized public health crisis. And I can sit here and I can tell you by the data. Now listen to this for Derek. And I'm going to say this, then I'm talking about prevention. Black males are less than 7% of the American population, but are more than 50% of all U.S. homicide. Okay, in the decade of the 60s, 46,719 black males were murdered in the United States of America. In 1970s, this is what you see, this linear growth. It doubled in 1 decade. That's what I've been looking at. It went from 46,000 to 84,000 from the 60s to the 70s. So now you got to look at all the government stuff that's took place to say, well, what happened? Well, now you go look at the moral degradation that took place within our communities. But it didn't stop there. The next year it went up to 92,893. Didn't stop there in the 90s, went to 95,000. So when we think the trend should be dying, it's actually growing. So I'm sitting here saying from the 40-year period from 1980 to 2019, approximately 268,000 black males were killed. And between 1950 and 1980, another 163,779 were killed. So in total, almost 450,000 black males died of homicides in the United States of America from 1950 to 2019. In contrast, 291,557 Americans were killed in battle during World War II. So it's been more dangerous for young black men in America than it was in World War II. So we got to understand this epidemic for what it is and address the cause of it. Rather, we just can't sing this away. I mean, we have, and I know that's what we're trying to do. And as we go into this last segment, we're talking about the prevention piece, which you know, what I learned in combat, you have to fight air, land, sea. They always hear me talking about that. You got to control the skies, you got to be on the ground, and your flank comes from the sea. And so you have to put you have to put people away. That's the deal when they're guilty for pulling the trigger and taking a life. That's what the law. But at the same time, you have to fight over here to turn the faucet off to what's leading to that. And from a prevention, what I call the early detection and diversion tactic that we've been working on, some things that we're trying to do. And what we realize, a young man, Drew's getting ready to start a school, a young man that's not in school, we realize that person has a greater probability of coming to see you just based on that alone and the other social factors with that. Speak to that as we get ready to wrap this up about that piece in your office.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. By the time a case lands on my desk, by the time mothers like we have here tonight get that call, it's too late for that individual and for that community. And I'll just say that I feel inadequate to be in the room with these mothers that have had to bury their sons, and the grace that I see them, and I've had so many interactions with the grace that I see them and to use their pain to help other mothers, and then to pour into how do we have less mothers having to go through what they did, and that's what really drives us at the prosecutor's office. And so we know that we can't just continue. Those numbers are overwhelming. We can't just continue to react after it happens. And so we really worked hard in our juvenile division. We brought Miss Casey. I know you're a big fan of Miss Casey. She was a longtime juvenile public defender. We brought her over to help us run our juvenile system. And we knew from the first day we came in office, we wanted to take a different approach, because that is our best youth is our best option to turn these things around. And we've been really working hard to do that. But we got some exciting things coming. We've got group violence intervention. You know, and I don't want to talk too much about it yet. We're actually going to have a meeting tomorrow, but we believe that we're going to be able to bring that to our community. And that is it attacks it from both ends, right? It's prevention, where we know this group is doing these things. We're going to help. If you'll, we'll help you. But if you don't, we'll stop you. And that's a great motto.
Absolutely.
It's hard for anybody to argue with that. And I know you're involved in that and all of that. And so we're working extremely hard to get justice and to work on prevention. And one thing I'll tell people all the time, I mean this, any of your listeners want to take me up on this, just come and spend a day with us. Come and spend a day in our office, and you'll see the energy. And you'll see how hard the people are working, how empathetic they are, and then some of our meetings with our partners, like they're joining us tonight. It's just we really want the community to know that we're wrapping around them, and we're doing everything that we can. We're not perfect. We don't make every decision exactly right, but our heart's in the right place, and we have a servant's mindset, and we're here to serve. That's the only reason that we're in this position to serve the citizens that we represent. We take that seriously, and it's an awesome responsibility. And it's hard at times. It is. You're right. It's hard, but I believe to do our job properly, we have to, because it's not as hard as what Yolanda and Miss Liz have been through. It's not. And we want to make sure that we convey their pain and try to prevent other mothers from getting in their position.
Correct. And, the process that we oftentimes deal with, I know, I remember, Drew, you can kind of speak to this, the families, of course, and when we lost those two kids that from the Dream Center just snuck out.
I mean, it was kids doing what kids do, stupid. And one of them had stolen a firearm at one point, but they just snuck out one night and got picked up by the guy that did that, and both of them ended up, unfortunately, dead in Little Rock, even though we're from North Little Rock. That we tried everything we could to intervene.
Yes.
And that's one thing I want to just give you praise on is when you say that y'all are out there, y'all have been at our events. Casey has been at more functions, supporting us and looking at alternatives for intervention, because those two kids are prime examples of if we could have just done something a little bit different, their mamas wouldn't have gone through what they're going through. Those two young people would be with us today. And once again, I thank you for your willingness and your office. It's not just you. You've developed a team there that is all in, not just on locking them up, but how in the world do we keep from having to lock them up? How do we create a better community for everyone?
Because I remember that story because they reported their children missing.
Yeah.
That's what I remember from that story. All right. Those mothers that when they went to the room and they weren't there. So then that's when they had to tell them that they were dead. Now, that's major.
That's major. And I'll tell you, I was at that scene that night, and that is one that sticks with me more. And I still have a vivid memory of seeing them and knowing what I felt like their mothers were going to go through. And one of them was right at the same age of my son.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned,
we're talking 12 and 13 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a extremely hard night. That case is, still hasn't been solved and is still open. So I can't, really talk about it, but I think about that often. And I can't imagine what it would like to be in that situation. You think your son's at home.
Yeah, exactly.
You find out later.
You call and say, where'd it go? I miss the kids. And then they say, oh, we've been waiting. We didn't know. These are things that mothers go through that we have to provide support for. And that's what our organization was doing. And that's why we are trying to find ways to help that population of kids that are oftentimes suspended. What we find is 85% of the young people in the juvenile detention facility.
One of those kids had been chronically suspended from school.
Yeah, that's it. And so, that's why we're looking at things we can. Well, Will, we want to thank you for being here with us tonight. This has been one of our 5-star shows. We got more comments going on here than we have, but we're grateful for you being here with us. And Pastor Drew, thank you for all you do for the prevention piece. And Bishop Fred, we want to ask you to pray us out. And until next time, we'll be back with First and 45 with Coach Fitz, where we are identifying social determinants contributing to the homicide of Black males before the age of 45. We'll see you next week.
And Father, we thank you for this time tonight. We pray for our prosecutor and all of the team that these cases can be closed. We pray for the grieving mothers, and we ask you, God, to just help us all as we continue to aspire to do what you would have us to do for your glory, that we can have victory in our community. Amen.
Amen.